morning. He's coming in a minute, but we got a new microphone. If somebody tell me if you can hear me well or you don't hear me at all. Good morning, Diego. I see your name in here. Do you hear me? How is seems like you hear me. This is the new microphone we got. Oops. So is this good? Do you hear my voice? Good morning, everybody. So then I make this close to him. Like that. Maybe that helps. Okay, good. Thanks. Thanks, Diego. Sounds good. Vanessa, thank you. Thank you. Then I make sure if he plays the clarinet, I'm going to put the microphone far away because people say clarinet sounds too big and his voice is too soft. So it's very difficult audio control. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. He's coming very soon. Such a terrible weather in New York, but we could spend a wonderful 1 week. Even weather is bad, but anyway, I hope you are safe and healthy and happy. He's coming in a minute. Thank you. I'm not sure it's called MV88. I will check later. I'm talking about microphone, but he's almost here. Good morning, Sarah. I see your name in my screen. Actually, my voice is so loud. I'm so sorry. Good morning, Louise.
Okay.
I hear. Yes, he
Are we sort of ready?
Seems good. I mean, not seems. Sounds good.
Sounds good?
I think
Can
so.
you hold a second, please? I need to do one thing. Okay.
Just to go like this, you talk back of the camera.
What? Yeah.
Okay. You go now?
Yeah, I'll talk, yeah. Okay, I have to.
Okay, let me.
It's okay, it's okay.
There's too much stuff and he can't get in.
I'm not that overweight. All right. Here, I've had this, but
Say good morning to people.
okay, it's great. Okay, first of all. So here we are again. I think I'm doing a little better than I was the last couple weeks in terms of lateness, tardiness. I'm still late, but not as tardy as I have been, perhaps. And life seems to be looking up a little bit now, even though we are in the midst of resurgence of the pandemic. One thing, so okay. I've been admonished that I'm using this iPad for what I need. Okay. I'm gonna have to do this a little bit. Here we are. Is this? What's happening? But now I have to look this way. Is that okay? Can I do this? That's all right. Okay, we get ourselves in order. This is not the best stand for this, perhaps, but it will do. Yes, I've been admonished that I actually hunch over too much while I'm reading and trying to figure out my notes that I've put on my iPad. I'll just take you to show you them a little, if I can show. These are today's notes. So they are kind of a mishmash of many things, and much too much, of course, which I have to look at, but I never have time to really cull them and put them in any kind of order. Perhaps I should make that time, but somehow it doesn't work out. Okay, now, first of all, of course, we have the continuing saga, this comedy of, it's not a comedy of errors, but it's a comedy of tried subterfuge, we can say, following our election just a little over a week ago. And most recently, there was a very strong rebuke, statement by the council that's coordinating the voting systems or overseeing voting systems used around the country, which stated categorically, actually, that this election was, as I read here. Am I still hunching over too much? Not.
Excellent today. It's amazing.
Amazing. Okay. That's why we need teleprompters like the big shots have, and they look so candid. Of course, they're incredibly well rehearsed. That's not even modern life, but life, I guess. The appearance of spontaneity usually requires even more careful rehearsing. Okay, so in reading that, you see, since I haven't rehearsed, I have to look over where I wrote this down. It says that this election was the most secure in American history, and that there is no evidence of any voting systems which were compromised. And I'll just read a little more. This statement was distributed by the Department of Homeland Security. Homeland Security used to be just the Department of Immigration, and then the name became a little more ominous, I would say. Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. That's a part of Homeland Security. And of course, it's one of our president's cabinet agencies. So this is a very strong, very important statement. Of course, our President Trump, this was yesterday actually, just tweeted, I mean, I should say cited, but he tweeted, I guess, an unsubstantiated report from a news network called One America News Network, which is a kind of bastion of conspiracy theory, which suggested that machines that were made by what the company called Dominion Voting Systems systematically, as I read here, deleted 2.7 million votes. And of course, those votes were all for Trump, those 2.7 million votes. There was a bunch of sort of energy that came out of that. That's now, in fact, they said this Dominion software was used in only 2 of 5 counties that had experienced a little bit of election day problems. That was in Michigan and in Georgia. And as was detailed by Homeland Security, the problems were simply a matter of human error, and they were corrected, and none of the cases actually affected the total number of vote counts. Regardless of that, our president's son, Donald Trump Jr., has called for total war over what he calls voter fraud. That in itself is quite a fraud. And he has been tweeting about theories that poll workers in Arizona, which was just called for Biden, for that poll workers in Arizona gave Trump voters Sharpie pens that could not be read by ballot scanners. Now, that's despite the fact that how would they know that these people are actually Trump voters, since the ballot is supposed to be secret, and in fact is secret, and I doubt the people are coming to the poll workers and telling them, okay, I'm voting for Trump, give me a Sharpie that doesn't work. Quite something. This is, as I said, if the consequences, the possibilities of consequences, I should say, were not so serious, this would be a fantastic little comedy. Yes. Now, part of the Trump base also has been sending death threats to poll workers in Pennsylvania. I know people always send death threats to everybody. It's absurd. Oh, yeah, I know. I promise not to do this very much, and it's still not so much time. Okay. So, with all that said, still, the virus is not under control in much of the world, although if we look to Asia, we actually have a model of how to deal with the virus and actually maintain a semblance of normalcy, we can say. I shouldn't say normalcy, but the semblance of social interaction. That's in China, in South Korea. It's in Vietnam. And of course, these are societies where people actually believe in the rule of law, although that's something that I don't want to get into right now, since with these countries. But the fact that they are doing I have all these signs of that, sort of like this and this and this and this and this. Oh no, and this and this way too. Okay, but I just put my foot in my mouth. I put both feet in my mouth simultaneously. I know that's happening more and more, but as the pandemic goes on, I think there's no alternative. So what am I saying is that in those countries that you have not only massive testing, you have also very detailed contact tracing and the sort of closing down of micro areas. It's been just sort of trying in New York City and in New York State, but is having mixed success, but at least it's having some success, I should say. But New York is actually closing down a little more than it was because of actually very serious spikes in infection. Well, what I should say though is in the world, the most recent total that I read of infections, of cases of COVID-19 is 53,247,983. Now I'm sure that's gone up a lot since about an hour ago when I actually looked this up online. Worldwide fatalities, and this is not even a year that we're talking about, are 1,301,985. Okay, now the U.S. of course is approaching 11 million cases and is approaching very quickly 250,000 fatalities. Now, this is actually quite serious, I would say. Also, there's both good and bad political developments throughout the world, but most seriously now in Ethiopia we have a budding civil war, and this is something that's become more and more, I see as an issue, and that has to do with the Nobel Peace Prize, which has become in a way politicized in a way that it never was before. But of course, I'm talking right now about the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, who received the Nobel Peace Prize and now is very much leading the country into civil war. Somehow that doesn't make quite so much sense. Now, I thought I should talk about another very, very serious issue, and that's in New Zealand. Yes, very serious, because there voter fraud was found.
What?
In New Zealand. Okay, now, this is the scandal that's surrounding the Bird of the Year 2020 competition. I'm sorry, I have to laugh about this very serious thing. Actually, this is New Zealand, which is a wonderful country, and it's very seriously concerned about our flying friends and avian biodiversity, we could say. But in any case, they have this yearly Bird of the Year competition. And people should write in with their favorite bird of the year. And what was discovered, the competition began on November 2nd. It will be ending very soon. And what happened was, a data scientist in Wellington, the capital of New Zealand, who was volunteering to monitor the votes, spotted something very suspicious. He discovered that somebody... Uh-oh, 1 second. What's happening? We're trying this new microphone, so...
It's just stopping.
All of a sudden...
Click with the microphone.
Really? Do we have to do something about this?
I have no idea, but it's good. Clicking. I mean, no.
Think that's the microphone, or is this the internet?
I don't, because it's...
Sorry about this. Or
No, seems okay now.
Just someone doesn't like birds, I guess.
Seems okay now. Seems okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, continue.
Okay, we can go back to the old system.
No, talk.
Yeah?
Continue.
Okay.
Yeah, this is fine.
Maybe it's my tone of my voice. Anyway, someone had slipped in a huge number of votes in favor of the kiwi puku puku, or little spotted kiwi bird. It is... so I'm sorry, but it's a wonderful little article that I read. It's one of 5 species of kiwi birds, which is New Zealand's national icon. Of course, it's a flightless bird, which is rather common in New Zealand, or I should say in general, in areas where there are natural boundaries and no, I would say, native natural predators. So birds can become lazy, I guess. So anyway, that voter fraud was quickly quickly found out and corrected, and I will say that the leader so far in that competition, it's called the Antipodean albatross, which is a seabird that actually can travel the length of the Pacific. It's quite endangered, but that is fighting off, as I'm reading here, a stiff challenge from the kakapo, which the organizers describe as an exquisitely perfumed species. Okay. This is not the first time, apparently, that there's been voter fraud in this competition. I guess people are very, very committed to their favorite birds. I can understand that. Okay, now, what shall I talk about now? Because I promised that I'm going to talk about music. I promised I'm going to talk about the clarinet, and I'm going to talk about technique, relaxation, and what I said, that support, breath support, contributed by fingers. affairs. And I will definitely speak about that. But before that, I have to go on and just say a little more about originalism. Okay, which is, as I see it, a really kind of rather vapid intellectual concept, I would say, and in fact is it's a kind of intellectual, let's say, politically neutral no, I'm saying this incorrectly. What it is actually is an apology for a conservative, very conservative, reactionary activism, or I should say, a justification for conservative, reactionary activism disguised as a very neutral judicial principle. It's really quite a bit of deception, I would say. Okay, now this is what I want to speak about, and hopefully I'll go through this very quickly. Although nothing ever happens in this time of pandemic in a very quick way. And in order to talk about this, I have to go back first to Eli Whitney. Eli Whitney, who quite unfortunately came out of Yale. That's my alma mater, and I'm not proud of this, although it's interesting. Eli Whitney was a fascinating person whose most famous invention was the cotton gin, which actually very quickly made cotton into a very important industrial crop, and gave an economic justification, I should say, excuse is better, for the importations of huge number of slaves to work in the cotton fields. Before the cotton gin, it was very labor intensive, very time consuming to actually separate the seeds from the cotton plant this way, and cotton was not a fabric which was so readily available, let's say. Okay, so why am I talking about Eli Whitney? Because he also was an inventor of different machines, and what he actually stated was his program was to make machines that used identical interchangeable parts. So these parts, you could quickly assemble them, put them together, and what that would do, we thought, was to create efficiency for production and to render craft, and the craft people, these were the people who in the past would always make the parts. They would make the the let's say, utensils. They would make the plates that we use, etc., etc. To But Whitney's project, let's say, or his idea, was to actually make them obsolete. So instead of the skill and the training that's necessary for craftspeople, and of course we are musicians, so we are craftspeople, to have them be able to produce what they produce. You could do this with machines which could be assembled easily, and with interchangeable parts. You could have one machine working this, and then it could be reconfigured for something else, and you didn't need this kind of expertise anymore. You see, and he said, to substitute correct and effective operations of machinery for the skill of the artist. There. Now, this way of organizing things at the time, and this was 1812, it's in the middle of the War of 1812, but that was another place. This was called the American system at the time. Now, of course, that is not uniformly bad and can actually be a big boon to society, to make things available to a much greater percentage of people. But now I jump to the 20th century. I come back to Milton Friedman, the Chicago School there, and the idea of economic efficiency becomes paramount. But what economic efficiency somehow did not include in their, what I should say, their calculations of economic efficiency, was the fact that actually people exist. And in a way, they have corporations exist, and their function is to be efficient. Right? And how do they be efficient? By maximizing profit in a certain sense. Okay. But people are not part of that equation. And what's also not a part of that equation is that in an economic system, things have to go somehow around this way. So let's say you have something that produces goods. It produces widgets or something. Someone has to buy the widgets, and if the people who have to buy the widgets don't have the economic ability to buy the widgets, then of course we don't have efficiency, but we have a system which actually will implode on itself finally. Okay, now that's all very. This is all background, and I can spend much more time in much more detail on this, but I'm not going to. Instead, I move now to Lewis Powell, who was a Supreme Court judge. He was appointed by Nixon, but Powell is actually a very important person in the retreat of the United States from progressive ideals, which starting in the New Deal and moving through into the 1970s was very much a part of the United States. What was that? Hello. Okay. So Lewis Powell, who was, a very important lawyer. He was from Virginia. He was a president of the American Bar Association. He served on many corporate boards of especially Philip Morris and cigarette companies. And he saw how the cigarette companies were being attacked, in a way, we could say, by the federal government because, as it turns out, cigarettes smoke is very carcinogenic. Okay, so this is all background. Now, this was in 1972, I think. Powell gave a speech which was very important, and in that speech, he warned that the U.S. political economy was under broad and virulent, I should say, attack by white and black radicals, whose heroes are Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, Ho Chi Minh, Mao Zedong, and who behave like Hitler and his stormtroopers. And what he said, and this is most important, the judiciary may be the most important instrument for social and economic and political change or political correction in his mind. So he said this is a vast area of opportunity if business is willing to provide the funds. And what happened, I mean, he was appointed to the Supreme Court, but you had a number, it's basically five, I think, industrialists, big businessmen, we could say, including, of course, the brothers Charles and David Koch. They become quite famous, and that's who decided I should say you also have Richard Schiff. You have what's his name? All of a sudden I forgot his name. Joseph Coors, who from the beer, and others, John Olin, others, who decided to found the think tanks and foundations, conservative foundations, and they gave large sums of money to do this. Okay, now, who was directly connected with these foundations, such as the Federalist Society? Someone like Antonin Scalia of the Supreme Court fame, and especially his mentor, we can say, and that is I'm so sorry I'm a little bit slow. I take my usual coffee again. His mentor, Robert Bork. Now, Bork was one of the principal architects of originalism, and what I found very interesting is while Bork maintained that you must have this, that the Constitution is a sacred document, and you have an unchanging word for word sense in it. In other words, he disparaged the Bill of Rights, and he called it, here I say this here, he says it was a cynical political add-on stuck there just to get the whole thing passed. And in fact, he off the cuff he said Madison and Hamilton and the rest of them had no coherent theory of free speech and appeared not to have been overly concerned with the subject. Okay, I'm not going to really say I have a lot more to talk about this, but I don't think that maybe this is enough right now, except that I just to oh gosh, yes. To see Bork. This also was someone who, when I've read his bits of his books and some of his decisions, it's another person who I see kind of in a way psychological. How should I say? It's psychological problems, even kind of neuroses, masquerading as intellectual achievement. And I've always found it kind of curious, and I find it a little comical that he spent so much of his time worried about pornography, for instance, and just writing all about how you must do something about this, while, of course, business you should just leave alone. So, in other words, in certain fields, his idea of not being a how do you say, judiciously active? I don't know if that's correct or not, but in any case, and that the law should not take an active role in certain things. In other things, it should take an active role. And we see that throughout decisions which these so-called followers of originalism have taken. Okay. Do you have something there?
It's totally different.
What's that?
Doesn't relate it, so don't worry about it.
Okay, not really. Okay, now, why am I speaking about this in music? I'm just speaking about this because we need to understand issues that affect all of us in the world, and issues which affect the United States especially, tend to become disseminated and tend to affect other places as well. So nobody is free from this. What I would say, this influence of political platforms masquerading as impartial judicial concepts. Okay. Uh, and I come back to people, yeah, and the sense idea that business can exist without people is something uh, which has become very prevalent now, and of course is tremendously dangerous. And we see that uh, we see that in the way that the pandemic in the United States is not handled in any kind of coherent or and compassionate way, I would say, in many places. And we see this also in a rise of a sense of that business is just exists for itself, in other words, to make, and for the few people who actually have ownership of this business. I will speak about this more later, and how it almost seems as if we're moving back to a time before capitalism, let's say, where you had this kind of renter class, we should say, and they controlled the assets and everything, and then you had massive people who actually had very little or just about nothing. Okay, enough of this. Now, as musicians, we need people, because art and music is something that not only belongs to humanity, but has to be communicated. Okay, and as musicians, in order to communicate, we need technique. Now I've come back to technique. I know. Okay, but I didn't do so badly in my talk. I think it's a little better than usual if I look at my time. So, what is the best daily practice routine? Yes, I will mention that I got. These are the true concerns that we all have, and this goes back to my earlier talk about little ideas, that the importance of little ideas as opposed to big ideas. Okay, now what I can do here is get rid of this at the moment. Now, finally, I know. So I put this over here. I come back here like this, and I'm still sitting down without a clarinet. So I want to know, what are the best practice routines, daily practice routines. I'm not the best person for that, maybe, because I've always been both very systematic myself and not systematic. So I will talk about basic ways of practicing, and these ways of practicing we can employ as daily practice routines, as just something very specific when you're looking at a piece, etc., etc. But what I should say in answer to this question in the beginning is even so that even blah, 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 blah. Even though I'm perhaps do not have a canon of what we must do, an order of what we must do. In like I see somebody, they play this particular long tone, then they play this scale slowly, etc., etc. But I do have probably certain principles and certain things I do. And I think for that I do have a clarinet. But, well, maybe. Wow, this is so cold now. Why is it so cold? Okay, and I think I have this I doubt is any good. Well, I have some reeds over there, but I'll try this. Okay. Okay, so yeah, we should see if this maybe is too loud.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I just put a little-
Yeah. Okay. Now, if I speak like this, people can hear me all right still. And we don't have any of this chopping or something in the microphone. It's all right. So that probably was not local. That was an internet issue. So there are few things that I practice all the time, even if I have only 1 or 2 minutes freed in order to practice. And the first are these harmonics or partials that I explained very early on. And oh, this reed is a brick. Should be. Let me put this a little lower. Then I'll get something else eventually, maybe. So I practice, and then I go up through, up and down. And that, of course, is the most difficult, going down to the low E. If I play basset, I would do that's even lower than that. But these partials going up, and you can go higher, of course. That gives you 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 up to the 9th partial. And why are those is so important? Because these actually tell us how to play the different registers of the clarinet. And like practicing shifts on string instruments, you have to practice so that you remember where to go, because it's always in the same place. They're not random, they're not erratic, but we need to constantly reinforce this feeling of going to the same place this way. And I practice them now basically slurred, although I teach them in the beginning not to be slurred because it's much more difficult to slur. Something like that. But it's of course much more useful because most of the music we play will be slurred. And to feel that when you saw things happen gradually, so when you're playing the actual registers of the instrument, the motion is not simply that no, but it is more gradual. So as I go all the way up there, is going this way, but I am definitely going to particular places on the reed and particular formations in the mouth. And we have to practice them also because, or I should say personally, my explanation is simply experiential. And what that means is that I experience a way of moving, and I try to communicate it to other people. You have to experience your own way of moving that way. And in a certain sense, you only will understand what I say once you actually can do this. Then you say, well, that's what he means. And of course, my explanation is a simplification of the process, because it involves many things. It involves the mouth, it involves the air, it involves the tongue motion, all that kind of stuff. But you just experience it, and then you understand both how to do it and what I've been talking about. Okay, so that's one thing I do, and that can be 10 seconds, or it can be longer. But and that depends simply on your level of experience. Okay, another thing I do, and this I don't know if I spoke about here or not, but there's an exercise I have called beginnings. And did I speak about that or not? I don't know. But in any case, I'll go over that quickly now. But I should give a little background. And this background, I apologize if I've actually said it before, but maybe not. Okay, and I start with the remarkable oboist Heinz Holliger. And Heinz Holliger, probably as a wind player, has been the biggest influence on me. He's and I met him in when was that? 1978 or something like that. Yeah, I mean, it's a long time ago. I shouldn't say these numbers. And you know my age, which is about 230. In any case, so I went to Basel. I visited Holliger, and Holliger, I played for him, and I played. I was a rather accomplished player at that time, as well, even though I was a little baby. And I played in a very normal way, a clarinet way, having studied in the United States. Okay, and I'm not going to go into detail about what I did, how I used to play, and how I reformed. But I probably will do that eventually. But I played for Holliger, and he was very complimentary to me. And he said basically one thing, and I find this is the wonderful thing about learning and about teaching, because now we have a kind of regimentation of teaching, that we have a certain number of hours, and it's important you do this, a certain this and this and this. But teaching a skill, such as playing the clarinet or playing music in general, or what, involves simply moments of what I call epiphany. That's like kind of moments, and those moments can change your life. And that can happen if your teacher just tells you one thing, for instance. And that can be worth more than a year or 2 years worth of lessons. Just that one thing. Or it can even be you hear it, if we're musicians, I'm talking about right now, but you hear it in somebody's performance, something, And that could lead to an epiphany which changes everything that you do. Now, I had my moment of epiphany right there after Holger listened to me. And he just mentioned, he said, in my experience, he said, if I do everything at the same time, it's much better. And I went, oh. The light went off, beep, 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 this way, and I went, that's right. That was an epiphany for me. And I developed this exercise, which I call beginnings. And this is an exercise that I do also together with these partials. And the beginnings exercise is very simple. And the issue is, and I'm prone to overanalyze everything, and I don't think that's such a bad thing in general, to be kind of scientific bent. I probably, if I'm not a clarinetist, I probably would have been a physicist. But maybe an artistic physicist. But then Einstein played the violin. And did I speak? I don't think I spoke about this either. I've done so many of these, I forget what I've spoken about. I have to make a digression about Einstein. There's the famous story of someone saying, Einstein, when you're trying to play, you can't count, things like that. But that's rather nonsense. But what we do have is a story that Robert Mann, the great musician and great violinist and the founder of the Juilliard String Quartet and one of the seminal musicians of the 20th and early 21st centuries, and also a big influence on me. And anyway, he related this wonderful story that they played in Princeton, this Institute of Advanced Learning that's connected to the university, and Einstein was working there, as head of that. And Einstein asked if they could play a string quartet. I forgot which string quartet it was with them. He played violin, and he wanted to play second violin there. And of course, Robert Mann, and I guess with other members of the Juilliard Quartet, agreed to that and went to I'm not sure I have the details correct now about where they were, etc., but let's assume they went to his home, let's say, and played through the I don't know, Haydn Quartet, Mozart, Beethoven Quartet with him. He said it was very slow, but he said what was remarkable is that Einstein had very bad vision. So he had memorized his part. Yeah. So this the greatest physicist, one of the remarkable minds, was not only a friend of the arts, but very beholden to music. Okay, now, I totally forgot my chain of thought, but I go back to it. So I had this epiphany from Holger, and I developed this exercise. And this exercise I call beginnings. And the reason is that as instrumentalists in general, we often have problems with beginnings. And as clarinetists in particular, you probably play something of that sort. My readers doesn't help me out, but I that was much on purpose. And but generally, if you play a note, the middle is pretty good. And then the end can be problematic, but it's something different. Okay, so I thought when Holliger mentioned it's best to do everything at the same time, I thought that yes, we don't need something special to begin notes, but we just do as if we're playing the middle of the note. So here, and generally like exercises are, they're kind of caricatures of how to play normally. And they're, in other words, they're exaggerations here. So I exaggerate in that I open my mouth a lot, and then there we go. The second one was good. There. And simply, if a note doesn't speak with good sound immediately, I do it again. And I do it, if it still doesn't, I do it again. So let's say, not so good, a little better, okay, that way. And then you can apply that with anything that you play. Let's say, no, I don't know, what piece should I play? I play something very simple. Let's say I start, we do Weber simply because it's there. That wasn't very good. Let me do it again. In fact, I don't like to sit down. So is it all right if I stand up? Can we try that? Maybe we raise that too?
Of course, no problem.
Yeah? Yeah, I will. Okay. Yeah, this is going to be much better now because but I will speak about sitting down also. So let's say this way you can just start the note, or so you can just pick up the clarinet and you begin. But you have to practice it, and that's why I have this beginnings exercise. Wow, this reed is so hard for me. Why? It's supposed to be a soft reed. But it's not soft. Anyway. Okay. So, these two exercises I do. Then there's another exercise I do. And that's just to get the fingers moving in a way. And this is what I call rhythmic repetitions. And I'll give you the simplest one of these. Is just we do something like that. And I do it quite fast. You can do things. And why do I do this? Because we need to feel a difference between the finger going down and the finger going up. So we have, that's the finger going down. Now this one, the finger going up. And I have these, yes, okay.
One more time.
Oh, it's all right? Yeah. Tell me.
One more time.
One more time? Okay. And I have a whole massive exercises which I don't include in my own daily routine. But are very good when I look at people who sort of need certain things. But this exercise with rhythmic repetitions actually alternates between moving the fingers down and moving the fingers up. So if I'm playing, that's down, down, up, 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 down, up, that's down, that's up, up, up. So then you have a, you know. So we have that kind of exercise, and you do that in many different ways. Let's, in fact, you know, this is a complete detour, but to what I was going to talk about, but maybe it's worthwhile, because I think this is the essential way to practice passages, and I will do it. And I will start with something. Let's say, do I have a clarinet that works here? What is this? No, this I don't want to use. This one I don't want to. Oh, here. I have another mouthpiece with another reed. I wonder if this is any better. Should I try it? Not sure. At least it's soft, but maybe a little obnoxious. Anyway, let's see how this clarinet works. It's quite awful, isn't it? It's okay. I don't mind. So let's say, the passage. That's from Bartók Contrasts, let's say. Then, and it is rather awkward here. So the question is, how do you practice this? Okay, and this should be part of a daily routine. So in other words, what I actually believe, and it turns out that I am a little more concerned with daily routines than I was saying, that what we should do in daily routines is use the daily routine to practice passages which give us trouble. You see, and if you're playing a particular piece for something, you use a daily routine to actually pick up the clarinet and work on a passage that you're having trouble with in this particular piece which you're going to play. Or it could be in general a piece that you always have trouble with, and you use that as it. That's why earlier when I talked about Corleano, that's the wrong clarinet here, but and I mentioned that I actually use that as part of my warm-up, per se. And Martino, which is something that I wanted to play for people, and I think I will play from. I say this is I use these pieces, particular passages from these pieces as warm-ups. That's why I think that is. So Bartók Contrasts that's the passage, and there are a couple things that make it difficult. First of all, on the A clarinet, there's a little stretch of hand, especially the left hand. Can you see? Yeah. That way. I apologize for this read, but It's okay. So we. I know it's we need. You can use Bluetooth probably. So it's you have the stretch for on the A clarinet here, and you also have the fact that it's a passage that is not the kind of most normal thing that we've practiced since we were beginners. You see, if it was that would be more something that we had more contact with, but you have that. But then it's a combination of two kind of seven arpeggios, and that's what gives us trouble. And so what we need to do is identify where in this passage we have trouble. Okay, and with that stretch of hand, that has kind of gives us trouble. So what we can do is we use repetitions and there you feel I feel B flat, B flat, B flat, B flat, and then E flat. This way. Then you can go and expand on that. Etc., etc. I'm going to that. And the way I do this also is very systematic. You know, I was saying I'm not systematic, and in fact, I think I'm maybe overly systematic, perhaps. But I start with a large number, but it's a definite number, and this is what's very, very important, is that we need to have a very clear sense of how many repetitions we're doing, so that the rhythm that we have is very definite and not erratic. I think it's the principle in general is we should not or I should say we should avoid randomness in anything. And I know this because I mention this to many people and they go, okay, I'll do something like that. And of course that's ridiculous. So you're very systematic and very accurate. So I do just 4 beats, daddle, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Very simple. And then I do half the number. And half of that. And half of that. That way. And then I do expand. Etc., etc., etc. It's boring to do this whole thing. Do this. And then the next note is that. So I will go up to that note. That kind of thing. And I do that more, actually, this way. And then you can go throughout the whole thing, finally. play this kind of passage. But what is most important in all of this, and this is something that is what I actually really want to talk about, it has to do with form and motion and tension and relaxation. Okay, and how much time do I have left? Decent amount.
No idea.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Let me actually look, because I should pace myself, sort of. I have a little bit of time, so I'll start this out here. Okay, and with this, form is critical to what I would say is what we call relaxation. And earlier in these live streams, I mentioned how we are not relaxed when we play, and that is of course very true, but it's also not completely true, because we have to have relaxation this way. And you have to even feel that when some part of you is working, another part is actually relaxing this way. And I mentioned also how the antidote to relaxation is motion. And that's very true, because if you have tension in your hands, the tension is always a matter of what I called earlier, and I call now, of course, isometric tension, which is a stopping of motion. Yeah? So you need to feel that you move, and the motion will create relaxation. And how do I do this? For instance, in this, there's a rotation of hands, which I talked about. This rotation is that way, you see. And the sense of positioning of hands here is very important, because you put the hand in, you move to a particular position. And here, for instance, it's interesting. Here, I'm like that. That is my hand position here for this split second. So it's not like this and then all of a sudden I go that way. It's this way, and I move there. So there's a combination of a form here, which, since it's a form, of course, it's not relaxed, you see. But because I'm moving here, the rest of me is relaxed, and then there I move up, and then these fingers actually start to relax in a way as I move. There, you see, and then going up here, if we look here, there's motion. And if I'm this way, it feels like relaxed, but it's actually not relaxed. It's more tense, because your body has to give more signals in order for the muscles to work again. While if you actually feel the motion, so you create a rhythm in motion this way. This way, you have the ability to really control any kind of tempo. Yeah. But you do need strength in the fingers, and you need to feel that you're actually pressing on the keys. Yeah. Now, I think that I'm not making much sense in a certain way because I'm talking about relaxation, pressing, and this, but it's all actually connected together, and the strength also. So if I'm playing this way, that strength somehow I feel in me creates relaxation. And I think it creates relaxation because I'm following through with motion this way, that way. Do people have any kind of questions? Anybody have a question? No. Okay, people never have questions anymore. That's interesting. Okay, so what do I want to do now is move back. And I'm going to talk about one thing. Oh, well, how did I do? Why is this way? I use this here, and I think I'm going to change my read. What is this? Oh, no way. This is terrible. I think that this is wrong. I did something wrong here. The box is right, but the reads are wrong. Why is that like that? Ah, yes, this may be the right one. Nani? What's that? I think it's okay. Yeah? Okay, so now I wanted to talk about, with this sense of squeezing, how the fingers can actually help, or in a certain way create support, what we call support. Okay, and support is kind of a complicated subject, and I have talked about it before. I talked about it quite early when I was asked about support, and also at that time I mentioned that for a long time. What's that? Oh. For a long time, I decided not to talk about support because most times what we think of as support is actually an issue of tongue motion. And I used to call it tongue position, but it really is motion. Okay, now that's the first thing I have to discuss, because you'll understand how this relates to fingers. When we think of support, we think, okay, support, like that, and we tense up here. Now, of course, you're tensing up generally muscles which have very little to do with your lungs. This way, here it's a sort of stomach, lower abdomen, etc., etc. And we think, okay, that's support because we sort of squeezing those muscles. Now, we look at the lungs, and the lungs are an organ, and then you have the trachea, which is another organ, and then you have muscles which attach to it. So you have the diaphragm here, which attaches to the bottom of the lungs and sort of goes this way, and you have muscles which go around this whole diaphragm and pull the diaphragm to to help inflate the lungs. They basically, like a bellows, inflate the lungs. Then you have muscles around your ribs. They're called pectoral muscles, and they actually also pull to, in a sort of, stretch the lungs laterally, so that they also inflate. And then you have muscles here that actually will pull again. So it's sort of 3 sets, and it's this is old information for many people, and I've talked about this a lot in the yoga theory of breathing, well, pranayama. They divide the lungs in 3 parts, and I think that's very, very useful for us. So we do have these 3 parts of the lungs. But in any case, the muscles here that work, if you open, they allow us to inhale, and then if you relax the muscles, you exhale. That way. Now, what we need when we're playing instruments, wind instruments, is we need what's called support, which is resistance, so that the air doesn't go like that. Okay? And what we can do, of course, is control the way the lungs actually deflate, and that we exhale. We can so I breathe in, let's say I do it, and then out, very slowly, but I do not have support that way. So support comes from a feeling of resistance, and there are 3 places where we can create resistance, because the trachea that we have, our windpipe, is not a muscle itself. It have muscles attached, but it doesn't have them. So you have nothing that can contract, and the only thing that can contract, of course, if you have asthma, you have inflammation inside, and that can be very life-threatening. But no, we have the place, which is the vocal cords, and they can close, and if we close the vocal cords and try to push the lungs so that they contract, but we don't allow it to, we get support like this. Okay. Then there's the back of the tongue, and if you close completely, you get the same thing. And then you have the lips. You close your lips, and you get support. And of course, let's say you close your lips and push very hard to try to exhale, and then just open, you lose your support completely. You see, so basically, support comes from these 3 places. You see, and the vocal cords for us, and in general, I mean, in Western ways of playing, and I think in all wind instruments in all throughout the world, it require a principle that the vocal cords remain open unless you're actually going to create a particular kind of articulation with them. So the vocal cords have to feel that they stay open here, and the support that you need will come from both the back of the tongue and the lips, and there's a relationship there. And this I'm talking about all the time, this sense that the clarinet uses a language of one vowel, which is E. Okay, E. And you can have different shades of this vowel because of the way the mouth works. So if you have an E and you're this way, but then you get U, that way, you still have the sense that the back of the tongue is high. And I mentioned that this is motion because the back of the tongue, ye, does not just keep something, but I mentioned this earlier too, that the embouchure is an action. It is a dynamic process. The way that you actually channel the air is that way, ye. And you have the relationship between the mouth, and I have talked earlier about the rubber band, about the stretch of the mouth, and then the stretch of the tongue, this way. That creates the relationship creates our embouchure, which then will actually channel the air in the way that make the reed vibrate and to create a sound for us. So that is the basis of support. But of course we need this here to control the exhalation. And that's why people will generally say, if you're playing softly, you need more support. Of course, we need more support because we have to slow down the air. So the volume of air can't be so around you, all the muscles which work both here and here, and I always have people sort of try to feel here and here, this way, and not all here, this way, right at the base of the lungs. That's to feel that there is strength there. And I come back to practice, and both the tongue issues, yes, I'm practicing all the time. And this is part of not only your daily routine, but your daily life. So I'm speaking English now, of course, the English language, and while I'm I'm practicing the tongue, you see, because not only do we need the motion, we need the feeling of what that motion is. And we have to practice that all the time. So I'm practicing so I know how the tongue is moving and how the lips are moving. So that's always the case. Then, of course, the stretch of the mouth. I also practice all the time. And that's a little more specific, So I walk around the street in New York City and I go like that, and people look at me and say, "Oh, yeah, that's a clarinet player." That's people in New York are so knowledgeable. I have to say, they're very, very knowledgeable. Yes. So that's this is very much. Right. But even if I speak I'm actually practicing because I'm reinforcing the awareness of what is happening in the mouth. So that then when I play, this is anything like that, something, I'm actually feeling something, and I have already practiced, even without the clarinet, what that is. That's okay. So, this is the time. Yeah. Okay, so I just go and I want to talk about the fingers though, and how let's say I do the fingers also, the sort of pressure of the fingers creates or supports the support of the here and of the lungs, of the muscles around here. You see, so it's very different. I feel I can't even do it. To have the fingers in a passive way. So I have the feeling when I play that this squeezing here actually creates the support in the rest of my body. I know so many pieces, but I keep forgetting what I would like to play here. But let's do this, I think. Just, I was going to play this whole piece for you, but maybe I will at some point, at another time. But let's say here, this is from this Donald Martino set, and there's certain pieces which are like stepping stones, and of course for the clarinet, one is of course the Nielsen Concerto, and one is this little piece by Donald Martino, which he wrote a long time ago, 1953, 52 basically, and then 53, when he was actually quite young. And I will, that opening run is a big challenge for people. And this is, as a piece, this is a stepping stone. In other words, once you learn a piece like this, your playing actually sort of reaches a higher level. But what my point is here is feel has to do with form, support, and relaxation of the fingers and then the whole body. So if I play, I'm feeling da 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 da, and then I feel it in my air as well, and with a nod to the great pianist Sviatoslav Richter, as I always do, who I didn't know like Heinz Holliger, but also has been a big influence on me with my feet as well. So I feel the feet, but I feel the hands and the arms here. That way. And the form of hand, I do this slowly first. And then here. That way. So you can see that the hand is moving in a way to different positions this way. And though this it goes that way, and even in the fast tempo I have this form, and this form I feel not only allows for relaxation but also creates this kind of support that I want. Okay, and shall we end there? Yes? So perhaps we do end there. I played at least the opening. Okay, I'll play a tiny bit more. Yeah, and just in this, because we have these high B flats, you know, and people go, oh no, this high B flat, and this is just a ninth partial or seventh partial, depending on what you want to play. I learned this very early before I knew anything about partials, and so I played maybe in an old-fashioned way. But we have here, so I play da 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 yatta yitta ah that way. The hands are very strong and have very decided motion, and the hands create this sort of support, which then allows me to channel the air in a very sympathetic way. And then da da di di da di da. So di da. So again, very strong hands with very decided motion, but what is that? I'm sorry. I did it. This di da. So di da di da di da di da. So again, the form of the hand is this way, and then oops. Yeah, this reed is very soft, but and then is that way. Why I'm not doing well? Yeah, hold it. I need to do well. Okay, that's because also either I look at the music or I don't. But let me do this here. Okay, I'm going to play for real, just a little bit. Nobody should publish this on something. Should I go on? And with that, okay. Goodbye, everybody.